In this video, we're going to talk about 3 common errors people make in their writing and how to avoid making those errors. First is the difference between affect and effect. Affect with an A and effect with an E. It's more complicated than this, but the simplest way to explain it is to say that affect with an A is a verb. Now, one quick way to remember that is verb is another word for action. It's an action, and so the A in effect can go with the A in action. And that can be how you remember that affect is the verb form. Affect with an E is a noun. So let's look at some examples. The weather often affects my mood. So if we break this sentence down, we have the subject here, and then this is the main verb. This is the predicate here, but this is your simple predicate, affects. It's functioning as a verb, so it's an A. In the second sentence, the weather had an effect on my mood. If you have an referring to it, it must be a noun, so it's got to be with an E. So up here, the weather affects my mood. The weather, it's doing something, it's an action. Here, the weather had an effect on my mood. Had is your verb, so affect is a noun. Another example. Your complaints will not affect my decision in the slightest. So again, subject, what's the verb? Affect. It's functioning as an action. Your complaints will not affect my decision. Here, your complaints will not have the slightest effect. So this is functioning as a noun. You can tell because we've got an adjective here that splits the word the from affect, but it still applies to affect. So this, it's being used as a noun. And here it's being used as a verb. So A for the verb, E for the noun. Second error, I versus me. When do you use I in a sentence and when do you use me in a sentence? Particularly when you've got multiple people. When you're just dealing with I and me by themselves, it's not a problem. It's when you add another person that people sometimes get confused. The easiest way to remember this is that I is the subject of a sentence and me would be the object of a sentence. Sentences usually go subject, verb, object. I hit the ball. Subject, verb, object. So me is an object, I is a subject. So, will you go to the cafeteria with Jolene and I? Here's the problem. A lot of people say this sounds right. The trick is, and this is how you figure out which one you should use. In your mind, just delete the other person and see how it sounds. Will you go to the cafeteria with I? Nope. That should be me. So the sentence should be, will you go to the cafeteria with Jolene and me? That's correct. A lot of people who think they know what they're talking about will tell you, nope, should be Jolene and I. No, it shouldn't, because this is functioning as an object, so it should be me. Down here, me and Jolene are going to the cafeteria. Well, like I said, just delete the other person and see how it sounds. Me are going to the cafeteria. No, we would never say that. We would say I. You have to change this to a singular. I am going to the cafeteria, but you would never say me am going to the cafeteria. Another thing we have to account for is politeness. Generally, you put the other person first in the sentence. So, should it be I am going to the cafeteria or me am going to the cafeteria? Well, it should be I. So this should be Jolene and I are going to the cafeteria. So, which ones are right? Derek, Seth, and I or me are heading to Chick-fil-A for lunch. Derek, Seth, and I or me are heading to Chick-fil-A for lunch. So, well, let's delete the other people, and then switch this to a singular verb. Would it be me am heading to Chick-fil-A for lunch? No. It would be I am heading to Chick-fil-A for lunch. So this sentence should be Derek, Seth, and I are heading to Chick-fil-A for lunch. Next one. Our dad bought new softball gloves for my sister and I or me. Well, let's delete the other person briefly. Our dad bought new softball gloves for I. Me. Our dad bought new softball gloves for my sister and me. Because it's functioning as an object. The last common error we're going to look at is a choice between two words. In some cases you have fewer or less, and you got to choose which one you should use. And in other cases you have number or amount, and you got to choose which one you're going to use. So here's the thing. Fewer and number you use when the things are countable. If they're individual things that you can count, then you use fewer or you use number. That's obvious because you can count things that have numbers. You use less or amount when the things are not countable. So let's give some examples. There are fewer bugs in the pool than there were yesterday. Now, some people might put less, but if there are bugs in the pool, could you count them? You could, so it should be fewer. On the other hand, there is less water in the pool than there was yesterday. Can you count water? You can't count water. You could count gallons, but it doesn't say gallons of water. It just says water, and you can't count water. So it should be less, because it's not countable. This bugs are. Water is not countable. Okay, let's talk about number versus amount. The number of dandelions in my yard is depressing. We use number because dandelions are countable. You could count the dandelions in the yard. It might take a long time. It might be annoying, but you could do it. They're countable. So you would use number. The amount of brown grass in my yard is depressing. Can you count grass? No. You could count blades of grass, but that's not in here. It just says grass, and you can't just count grass. So that's why you would use amount, because grass is not countable. Now, if we said the number of brown blades of grass, blades would be your noun, so number applies to that, because you can count blades, but you can't just count grass. So it's not countable, so it should be amount. All right, here are two sentences. Let's see if we can determine whether we should use fewer or less in each one. So the first sentence, there is fewer dust on my bookshelves these days, or there is less dust on my bookshelves these days. Well, can you count dust? No, so that should be less because it's not countable. Again, if we change, this is functioning as a noun. If we change the noun, like motes of dust, you can count motes, or particles of dust. You change the noun to something countable, then we would use fewer. There are fewer particles of dust on my bookshelves these days. But since it's dust is the noun, it's not countable, so it's less. All right, let's look at the next one. There are fewer books on my bookshelf these days, or there are less books on my bookshelves these days. Well, less is not countable. Can you count books? Yes, you can. So it should be fewer. There are fewer books on my bookshelf these days. All right, let's do the same thing with number versus amount. Again, number, countable. Amount, not countable. The number of fish in the ocean is steadily decreasing, or the amount of fish in the ocean is steadily decreasing. Can you count fish? Are they countable? Yes. So it's number. even though realistically no one could count the number of fish in the ocean. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, are fish countable? Yes, they are. So it should be the number of fish, not the amount. Second, the number of water in the oceans is steadily increasing, or the amount of water in the oceans is steadily decreasing. Can you count water? No. So it should be amount. The amount of water in the oceans is steadily decreasing, because water is not countable. Now, if we changed it from gallons of water, gallons are countable. So then it would be the number of gallons of water in the ocean is steadily decreasing. But that's not what we actually have in this sentence. We don't have gallons. And that's 3 errors that you should no longer make in your writing. Mindeman out.